Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignell. This is part of my 29 Days of Magic series, where I interview an awesome Black woman a day for 29 straight days. And today I'm so excited to have Jamila Williams, who is a principal in the Business Transformation and Strategy Department at the Hackett Group. She has an amazing story, and I cannot wait for you all to hear it. Hey, Jamila.
Hi, how's it going, Laura?
Just doing stuff, making magic happen. The huge. But so glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, the first question is always the same. Answer is always so unique. And so I'm sure yours will be no different. So, Jamila, what was your first job?
My first job was in high school. I was a receptionist at a car dealership called Fremont Pontiac Oldsmobile GMC truck. And I had to say that when I answered the phone, the full name.
Oh my goodness. Okay. That's awesome. And how long did you have to do that job? And did you make any good money being a high school student doing this?
Well, I did that while I was in high school, my junior and senior year. And then I think when I came back from college, during the summertime, I think my first job and that paycheck, and I took a picture of it, of course, was $4.24. That was the minimum wage. And I was so proud to get it. And I do remember, working there for a year and getting up the courage to ask for a raise. And I think I got a raise to $4.78. And I know, so this is really dating myself, but I was very happy to get that money and learn how to budget with that little bit that I had. And I was happy with it. So I wasn't super rich from the job, but it was a great experience. And I met, and I'm sure you can imagine, at working at a car dealership, I met a lot of characters in that role. I have lots of stories, and that's for another podcast.
I was going to say, that was my next question. I was like, okay, what's the weirdest person you met at a car dealership? I can imagine everyone was normal.
I will say that the service department was very interesting. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he did not have thumbs, but he was a great mechanic.
He did not have thumbs?
No thumbs, great mechanic though, and a really nice guy. But he was great. Everyone loved him, but he had no thumbs.
I once went out with a one-handed Italian, so
okay.
I learned a lot. I was like, oh, all right, cool.
Right. I have questions there too, but again,
that's another time. Over a cocktail. Totally over a cocktail. Okay, so we go from hanging out with the cast of characters at the car dealership to where you are now. That has got to be an incredible career journey. So how did that happen?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm from California originally, and after high school, I wanted to go to a historical Black college and university just to get that experience. And so I left home and went clear across the country to Hampton University, and had a wonderful experience there. And while I was there, I did a lot with the marketing and strategy planning, working with small businesses, which has always been a love of mine, but did not, over time, that kind of blossomed. But after college, I decided to move to New York. I don't know if I decided, it was the job opportunity, but I moved to New York after college and spent some time within financial services, working as an analyst in operations. So not quite the small businesses that I started to develop a passion for just in my college time, doing some volunteer work with small businesses in the Tidewater area. But it was a good opportunity to be at a large organization, learn about corporate politics and how do you navigate, how do you thrive, how do you be, one of only 4 Black folks, analysts in our class. And I think it was a total of 1,000. This was at Goldman-Sachs in the year 2000. And so just kind of how do you navigate, politics and still be able to be a leader in that type of environment. At some point, I was working a lot within, financial services, didn't quite love it and really wanted to get back to an interest of mine, which is, again, small businesses, process design, and thinking about strategy development. spent some time, I'm always volunteering and working with entrepreneurs and helping them with business plans. And I just was like, hey, I should get paid more to do this, or
Exactly.
I like
my
it. How
thing.
can I make a job? How can I make a business out of it? And I recognize that having credentials, especially being young, is helpful. And so business school was an avenue that allowed me to credentialize myself, as well as do what we call kind of career switching, because my day job was working as an operation analyst at, a big investment bank. But what I like to do, I wanted to be able to have people pay me for it. And so the MBA helped me with that. And I would say that my first job out of business school, continued to stay in New York, was with a smaller consulting firm by choice because it felt very entrepreneurial. It offered me opportunity to work with small businesses, big businesses, work on really interesting strategy projects. I worked, before it was what people do today. I spend a lot of time on how do we quantify music that's being streamed? How do we decide as a record label? How do we figure out what's the right revenue model to have, and what sort of contract needs to be in place? And so that job really was great because it just gave me so much exposure to different types of industries and business problems, which I loved. At some point, though, I got pulled into financial services. The crisis within, think about 2008, was emerging, and there was a need to have someone that had a sense or experience within financial services. My ability to do process design and think through strange situations and understanding kind of how laws are changing, that was a skill set that was beneficial. And so I got kind of pulled into an area of governance and compliance, and I was good at it, but didn't quite love it. But, it's kind of one of those things. And, I can talk about kind of lessons learned that I, I, I took those opportunities because it was there and I was good at it, but didn't quite love it. But I stayed in that type of role for a little longer than I probably should have, until I really challenged myself to do something different, get back to something that I enjoy doing. And so I started a business, an actual business, a cooking business on my own called Sweet Savory. And I think I'm going to resurrect it. I decided that, hey, one of the things that I love to do is cook and tell stories and learn about cultures. And I also love having a business because I like helping other people with businesses. So I was like, let me try to start my own. So while I was kind of doing this governance and risk stuff that wasn't so fun, I launched this, a business that I really enjoyed. And I needed to come to a decision of, do I do it full time? Do I quit my job? And I wasn't quite ready to pull that trigger. Instead, I was aligned or got connected to another company, the Hackett Group, which presented me with an opportunity to do something new, get out of finance because it was very boring, and get back to, the strategy work that I loved when I first kind of started consulting after business school. And so fast forward to 8 years later, I'm now the head of our New York office. Came in as a manager, a principal. So there's kind of within the consulting world, that just means that now, instead of, I do delivery work, but I'm now doing more sales work. So that's a muscle that I'm learning to flex in terms of how do you kind of take your expertise and be able to communicate your value to potential clients, and so that they would want to work with you on different projects. And the area that I focus on is procurement. Procurement is just, how do you buy things? And so every single organization buys pencils at or they may buy, big operating units for whatever they sell. And so I help organizations think about who are the people that, should be doing this, what's the right process design, maybe what sort of technology should be leveraged to make it a more efficient and effective organization. And so I do a lot of that. I've got some interesting projects going on right now. I travel a lot. And what kind of keeps me here doing this work is that I get a chance to work with different business problems. I also get a chance to to mentor people, giving them advice about kind of, my experiences along the way. I've been in this, work world for a long time. I've been a consultant for a long time as well. And it also has, just over this, course of, kind of gaining this expertise allows me to be more confident about, what I bring to the table. And so as I look to actually kind of relaunch my small business, I'm very confident that it will be even more successful than it was before.
That's awesome. I love this. And I also love seeing Black women in consulting. Who are the shot callers? You're like the second Black woman I've met in the last 4 days who are at one of the big firms doing this. So I'm like, it's something in the air.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's a process to get a seat. I'll just a bit of a tangent. When you become a leader, sometimes you forget, or at least sometimes like it took me a while to remember. I have a seat at the table. I need to speak up. So I became a leader, and sometimes you're still kind of sitting there, kind of waiting to be called on. And as soon as I kind of realized, oh, I have a voice, I can say who we hire. I can say what the strategy. Oh, I'm also the head of our recruiting for New York, but I have a way. I have a voice and I have power. And so being able to be comfortable in that skin, to be able to flex that muscle, it takes time to get there. But definitely when you're there, you can certainly help to open doors for people that you may not have had originally. And I'm very grateful to folks that came before me, and I'm happy to bring people along with me.
Awesome. I love this. And so, I sometimes think that people assume that consulting is a big, scary black hole. And and we hear about consultants, they travel a lot, they make good money, but like it's very nebulous about what they do.
Yeah.
So could you, in under 40 minutes, kind of explain what it takes or entails to get into consulting? Obviously sometimes folks are like, hey, can I transition from one job to like in the world of consulting? Is it even possible? Like, what are you guys looking for? Because since you are in the recruiting world and I was looking to get people hired, where do you think what's some kind of top tips you can give some folks who might be interested to learn more about your area?
Yeah, I will say that the buzzword consulting has been around for years, and there's a lot of bad jokes, similar to lawyer jokes, that you ask a consultant what time it is, and they get paid to tell you what time it is, or look at your watch and all that, and that's there's some truth to that from like the old days, but really, if I had to break down, what is consulting and what is that world, and how do you thrive in it? Consultants tend to have a level of expertise or ability to think about business problems. I'm going to say put it in the world of business, but you can be a consultant for really anything. But you're able to provide an approach to think about a business problem and take really a data-driven kind of steps to break down how would you address the problem, the steps that you would take to kind of analyze and pinpoint opportunities, and then you make recommendations on how you do it. Some organizations in terms of consulting say, hey, once I've told you what you should do, let me actually help you do it. And so that's kind of an implementation consultant. Where I tend to work is more on let me help you understand what the business problem is and what the opportunity to resolve it. I'll just give a few examples. So some organizations, they've grown by acquisition, and they're just, let's just think about the fact that they can't, there's a lot of people doing the same thing, but they just know that they keep growing by acquisitions, and they expect to keep growing, but they can't just keep the same group of people. Now that they have 10 companies, they can't have 10 people doing the same thing, because that just, business wise doesn't seem to make sense. So you can grow and just add more people, or you can rethink the way that you're organized. And so someone would might come to me and say, Jamila, we're spending a lot of money on people. I don't think that our operating costs should go up in the same speed as our revenue, because that doesn't make sense. What could we do? How can we do it? And when can we do it? And so I would take a look at, who's doing what, make some recommendations about what should who should be doing it, maybe not the actual individual, but just kind of how many people should be doing it, where they should be doing it. Maybe there's a new technology or a new way they should be doing it. And then from there, those recommendations could be implemented. So that's just an example. I will say that within consulting, for the most part within business consulting and probably others, you have to understand how to listen to what people are saying. So just because someone's giving you a problem, they may be talking about something else. And so being able to be an active listener, being able to ask critical questions and to truly get to the heart of what's the problem we're trying to solve for is very key. The other thing is I'm sure you have even friends that just kind of come up with, hey, you should do this, and it's not based out of anything. So being able to be comfortable with data analysis, some sort of reference and research, because in order to be credible, to give recommendations is going to be important. So someone getting started out in consulting, you're not an expert yet. But if you have a lot of comfort in data, which is often what's used to help prove our hypothesis or what we kind of think the answer is going to be key. I would say that anyone that's not comfortable with data probably should try to get comfortable with data if they're going to be in this consulting world, at least within kind of the type of work that I do. And then in terms of what are people looking for, I think that was one of the questions you were asking. Data, active listener. I don't think you need to be in a specific degree in terms of like if you went to college, you have to be a business major or an engineer. But being able to communicate in a structured manner how you're thinking is important to thrive within this area. And I think you also need to like people because this is a people business.
I love that you said that.
Well, yeah, it's a people business, and so there's some folks that are very comfortable with data, and they're like, leave me alone with the spreadsheet. I don't want to talk to anybody, and that there's a place for them in the consulting world. Yes, maybe not as you get to kind of what I'm responsible for now is more sales work. You need to know what you're talking about. Yes, I will say that I'm not like the expert in everything, but I do, I'm resourceful and I know kind of who to pull in. But you gotta like talking to people and hearing what they have to say. You can't be quick to be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Now I do run into people that I think that, but I think I hide it pretty well. But sometimes it comes out. But you gotta like talking to people and you want to know, understand kind of their stories and really be interested in their success and how you can help them to get there.
Yeah, yes. And thank you for sharing that because I think sometimes there's these careers where they can be, wonderful opportunities, but what those doors look like to get them opened for folks like, huh, how do I even start? So thank you.
And I guess if anyone's listening to this podcast, I'm always happy to talk to folks about consulting and, is this the right career? I'm sure you can always link in with me just to ask questions. I think that asking questions is important, and I'm happy to kind of allow for someone to connect with me and we can spitball ideas in terms of how do you get there and is this right?
I love that. And thank you for sharing that. Because again, I said, like, I know lots of folks in consulting. I don't know a ton of folks of color in consulting. And like the last 4 days, I've met now 2 very senior women. And I was like, it must be in the air. So, but thinking about all that and being a Black woman consulting, I'm guessing that the road was not easy for you. So, talking about time you had challenge, you thought there's no way you're getting through it, and then you did.
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Oh, talk to me about a time when you had a challenge, work-wise or personally, where you're like, there's no way I'm going to figure this out, get through it, and then you did.
Oh, my, okay.
You're like, I'm so ready to pick up.
Like today? It just happened.
It does not have to be today.
I made it through. Let's see. I'll talk about my first consulting project at this company at the Hackett Group. I was working so keep in mind, I came from financial services. I was doing a lot of that. And when I came to Hackett, there was a lot of supply chain and operations work. Now I did work in operations and finance, but this is not the same thing. This is about how do widgets get made? And so the first project that I had was for a plastic manufacturer. And they wanted to, this was the business problem. How do we improve our supply chain to get better lead times? And that sound like great words. I know what every single one of those words mean, but honestly, to take a step back, I didn't know like how plastic was made. I use plastic. Supply chain and lead times are buzzwords. I mean, I went to business school. I know what those words are, but it's like having to actually do some sort of, project around it where people are looking at me like I'm the expert. That was a very, very daunting. But here we go. Nonetheless, I was slotted in to lead some work streams and then subsequently lead lead like a detailed design of how to do some of the recommendations all by myself. And I was very, I don't think I had time to be nervous, but in retrospect, I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. And so did this kind of this first part of the project. I did have a team with me to be able to learn from, a learn on the spot. A consulting trick, just for folks, is if you're as a consultant, you don't understand what's happening, you say to the client, so why don't you talk me through your day? Tell me what does that mean exactly? And you get them
the workaround.
You get them talking and you're learning and this is before COVID, before you're not like, doing everything virtual. Now you can Google search while someone's talking, but you run back after the meeting and you're like, okay, what does that mean? But you're, practicing your nodding and looking confident. But so the first part of the project, I was able to kind of fake it because I had other people kind of around me and it was a team sport. But once we gave recommendations, the client said, hey, we want you to help us implement. And I was talking about that earlier, where sometimes you say, hey, this is what you should do. And but then there's other times that they say, can you help us do it? And so they wanted just me to stick around to help them do it. And this required an extra level of knowledge and expertise because, people can walk up to me at any point in the break room, in the cafeteria. I would have people say, hey, what about XYZ? And so I needed to know what I was talking about. So the interesting thing was that I again, just felt very, I don't think I had time to be too nervous, but I know that I didn't know I didn't know much about it, but I was just kind of learning it as I go. And I remember connecting with one of the directors who was one of those guys that loves analysis and he knows like everything. And so I told him, hey, I've got this project and they're asking me these questions. And so every Friday, I remember we would meet in an office, we'd get on the whiteboard and he would go through basic supply chain and operations concepts. And the funny thing was always a week ahead of the client, literally just a week. Cause those things you can't like learn in, a day. And so if we were doing some sort of analysis or talking through concepts and I found myself just being able to answer questions, because I just learned about it I would go there on Mondays, but on Friday, I just like learned about the concept and they were so impressed and they never knew that I just learned it. So I was, just faking it till I made it. And so I think that's just I think that's the story of, I guess, being a professional is that fake it till you make it, find some resources, find mentors, find people that are going to support you and be invested in your success. And keep moving one step forward. There's no time to sit down and, wallow in the confusion of not knowing something. You got to get up and figure it out.
I love the fake it till you make it and also figure it out. Are the key elements to any good plan and anything that you do. It's just like, I think probably one of the biggest lessons that has been through pretty much every episode of this year's batch, 29 Days of Magic interviewees, has been, I'll figure it out. Like,
exactly.
Some way.
That sounds familiar. That should be the t-shirt. And I think that, if I could think about just being a woman and being Black in this industry, it's a little more challenging because you don't have that immediate circle, or at least it's easy to kind of stay in your circle, your comfort zone, and no one's necessarily reaching out to you proactively, which is what I observed in, with my other, male colleagues or, non-Black colleagues, that they had a network already. Figuring out and, being able to say, hey, can you help me with something was very easy because they're doing it at the golf place. They're, smoking cigars, and it's very easily to get that mentorship. And I have found that over the, years that I've been working is that, I mean, I definitely have to be proactive. No one really reaches out. Some people do, but for the most part, it's me reaching out, me trying to find the right advocates. When people kind of even show a sign of, being an advocate, jumping on that. I can't tell you the number of times that I tell people, give me a call, and they don't call me. And that's been a lesson learned. If someone even suggests, even if it's in passing, oh, give me a call, I can help you with that. I do it because no one's going to call you. No one's going to no one's going to help you out. And as Black women in particular, you have to build your advocate circle with people that don't look like you, because you need people that are in higher places, and for the most part that's not folks that look like us. And so you got to be able to reach out, build relationships, learn from them, observe from what other people are doing, and also make your own way based off of kind of the experiences that you're having.
Awesome. I love that, because like you'll figure it out. You'll find a way, but also you cannot give up. Please don't.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's actually a big part of it. So I'm guessing as a consultant, you probably travel a lot, talk to a lot of people. It's exhausting. So what does Jamila do for Jamila? What do you do for your self-care?
Well, right now I'm not traveling as much as I did, but I was a traditional road warrior, meaning Monday through Thursday on, early in the morning at airport and late at night coming back on Thursday. While I would be traveling, and maybe this is a bad thing, we like to eat as consultants, and that's just kind of me. I love food. I love going to new restaurants, and so that's what I would do on the road. That was like my self care. And folks that traveled with me and know me well from a work perspective, on Wednesday nights, I always made sure to be back in my hotel room because I love South Park. And so on Wednesdays, there's South Park on Comedy Central, a marathon. And so my self-care would be, no matter what was going on, I would get back in my hotel room and just lock away and watch South Park, just to kind of have that craziness of what they're doing on that TV show. Now I still I love to eat. And as I mentioned, I built a business around cooking classes. And so I'm just getting back to cooking. I have a nice kitchen now. And so just spending time with friends, eating and enjoying meals, talking, taking time to check in with them is a great self-care part for me, because I can easily just get sucked into my work world. And it's always great to eat a meal with a friend, or cook a good meal for a friend or a loved one, and enjoy that time of nourishment.
I love that. So so now if you tell me about a favorite meal, I'm gonna ask. What's your favorite place so far recently for dinner?
Oh, recently. Okay. So there's a place in New York. It's called Patrick's Place, and it is a little jazz club, and it's Jamaican food. And so I love oxtail. I've tried to make them, and they don't come out very well, but I do try it. But their oxtails are delicious, and they have this carrot cake. I'm allergic to nuts, and theirs is nutless, and it's delicious. So I go there often enough to I know the owner, or at least hey, and he knows I want carrot cake and probably oxtail. So that's my go-to spot for relaxation, music, and good food.
Oh, I love it. So Patrick's Place, is this in the city in Brooklyn?
That's in Harlem.
Oh, sweet. Well, as a proper Jamaican, I have to go check this out. To determine like how good the food is and
It's delicious.
commentary.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend the next time you're in New York, if you go to Fat Fowl in Brooklyn. I know that's a good
Oh,
restaurant. And they do what's called an oxtail grilled cheese. And
oh
when I
my gosh, that
tell
sounds
you,
delicious.
it will change your life.
I
Man,
already love it.
like,
I may have to make a trip. I live in Harlem now, so you know how people are like, oh, Brooklyn's so far away, but I
it
can make
is
a
right.
trip for some good food.
Yeah, it's literally it's a City Point where the Target is,
Okay.
and
Yep.
I don't know, Draft House,
Mhm.
and the food court, but it
Yeah.
is worth the trip. I mean, it's the oxtail grilled cheese, it's the roasted chicken, the
Mm.
macaroni and cheese, the fried plantain. Like
Wow.
you'll just the bronzino with this like black rice situation, girl.
Okay,
Like,
say less. I'll be there. That's great.
so I did one thing I love is food.
Oh, good.
So
Okay, so then we definitely have to reconnect. Talk about your one-handed Italian friend and like car
yes,
dealership experiences over
yes.
food.
Honestly, I feel like a date at that Val sounds like a good time. So over a cocktail, I'll tell you all about the wine Italian, um, and more. Um, and so last question for you.
Mhm.
Do you have a give and or ask of the audience?
I have a ask
Go
to the
for it.
audience. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others. You don't know what they're going through.
Awesome. I absolutely love that. That is fantastic. Thank you so much for that one. Uh, so, as you've been such a delight, and you provided such a wealth of information that folks are going to be able to wrap their arms around.
Good, I hope
Um,
so.
and I definitely will. And your restaurant experience is delightful. And obviously, now that we've gone over food, we're gonna have to meet
Mhm.
for. We already have planned for a restaurant date and hilarious stories to abound.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being part of 29 Days of Magic and joining me on the podcast. And we'll put your details in the show notes for folks to check to connect with you and probably find out more about consulting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited about your podcast and giving women just an opportunity to share their stories. I think that's great. And so happy that you're doing it.
So thank you so much. And that is our show.